It's easy to slip into a place of complacency, especially when things are going pretty well. Here in Utah, things have been going pretty well for a long time. And even when there are problems, they're typically not nearly as bad as in most places. And maybe that's one of the reasons why the population keeps growing so fast. We've got a housing crisis on our hands because there's just not enough homes for people to buy. And yet, we also have a massive homeless problem. Hi, welcome back to the Colorblind Architect Podcast. I'm your host, David, and as an architect, I build housing. Yes, not physically. I build it virtually and then provide the plans to contractors, and they build them physically, but still, I build housing. And so, why would I be talking about homelessness? Well, obviously, I build housing, right? And if you can give a man a house, they're no longer homeless, right? So, yeah, why am I talking about homelessness? Well, we do have a severe problem of homelessness, probably throughout the world, but I'm aware of it here in Salt Lake City, largely because I live here and I see it, and it is a problem. There are tent cities of people who are homeless, and while it's nowhere near as bad as some cities like Seattle or Los Angeles or San Francisco, but it's no less bad. And when I talk about homelessness, understand that I am not an expert in this topic. The only expertise I have is on the housing side. I may have some understanding of mental health, largely because I have designed mental health facilities, and as a result of that process of designing those kinds of facilities, I had to learn enough about mental health issues to be able to provide a design that actually works. With that said, I want to make it clear that I'm by no means a psychologist or any kind of expert in mental health. In fact, my wife actually knows a lot more about that topic than I do, because she actually majored in a topic that was adjacent and related to psychology and mental health. So a lot of times I pick her brain for those kinds of topics. But as for me, I focus more on the actual physical housing. So the problem of homelessness is a complex one. And for the sake of this discussion, I want to divide this into two separate camps. There are the chronically homeless and the temporarily homeless. Now, the temporarily homeless, that's usually not the problem that is visible. What we typically see in the cities, what we see in the cities with like tent cities and people living in parks, that's more of the chronically homeless. The temporarily homeless are people who, for example, they fall into bad times and maybe their home gets foreclosed and they have to move out temporarily, or they get evicted, and where do they go? There are actually shelters. There are actually facilities, charitable institutions that provide temporary housing and also help people get back on their feet. But there's obviously not enough of them. But typically, the temporarily homeless are the ones who are actually homeless as a result of something that they had little control over, and it was kind of forced upon them. But they are willing to work hard, and they do typically get out of it over time. The chronically homeless, that could be defined as people who are living in the streets on a long-term basis, typically with drug addiction problems or mental health problems, and they typically choose to live that lifestyle. Not always, but a lot of times they do. And why do they choose that lifestyle? Well, a lot of times it's because it's easier on them, that there's less responsibility. See, owning a home or even living in an apartment comes with it with great responsibility, and a lot of people that responsibility is just too much. And so, I mean, like, for example, a one-bed apartment here in Salt Lake is going for about $1,400 a month right now. That's a lot of money. And that means you have to be making enough money to provide that income. Let's just say, for example, you get a job at, well, let's just say, for example, Del Taco, which is it's a really crappy fast food restaurant here locally. They serve up really cheap tacos, and you know what? They're hiring right now at $15 an hour. So, yeah, granted, it's a really crappy job, but you could theoretically be making $15 an hour. Now, at that pay rate, you would probably be clearing about $2,000 a month in income, which isn't a lot, especially when you listen. I just said the average one-bed apartment in Salt Lake City right now is going for about $1,400 a month. So if you're clearing $2,000 a month, that is way too much for you to be able to live off of. So you need more money than that. So it is easier. It is easier to be homeless. So what's the solution? Well, obviously, for some people, it's just a temporary issue. They are working their way up. Obviously, for a lot of people, they find roommates, they share rent, they find ways of making it work, or they live further away and they commute in and out so that they can get cheaper rent somewhere. There are ways of solving that issue. But for the chronically homeless, if it is an issue of severe drug addiction or mental health issues, the problem becomes a lot more complex. And specifically when it comes to my role as an architect, there's not a whole lot I can do other than to hopefully be able to participate in programs and projects that provide for housing for the homeless. That's actually one project I am working on right now. Working on a project that would hopefully bring free housing to the homeless. And it's not to brag, it's more to say that this is one of the solutions. Now, this particular project follows after the example of Austin, Texas, where they did tiny homes. Tiny homes, as you've probably heard, you probably know about them. They're basically 1,000 square feet or less, usually. In this case, a lot smaller, closer to about 350 square feet a piece. And the whole idea is to have a very compact but functional living arrangement on a very small footprint. And the reason why you do that is because it creates much less for you to have to clean and maintain, but it also makes it a lot cheaper to build. Because one of the challenges right now is construction prices are so high that it is really hard to get a reasonable sized apartment or house built for an affordable price to anyone, let alone the homeless. And I'm talking about people on the low income spectrum. I'm not talking about people who are making six figures. If you're making six figures, you're probably doing okay. If you're making less than that, you might not be doing that well because, inflation, right? I know. The government tries to claim that there is no inflation. Yeah, whatever. We all know that that's BS. But the truth of the matter is that if you can get the housing small, it makes the cost of construction lower per unit. You get people into these, it provides them a good, clean, healthy living space. That still doesn't solve the problems of mental health or drug addiction. So any kind of solution such as this needs to be coupled with services. You need to have mental health and drug addiction services. You need life skill training. You need job training, financial training, all kinds of things to help build somebody up. And this is only if they actually want it. See, again, if somebody doesn't want to be helped, you're not going to be able to help them. Hopefully we can, because it is a horrifyingly depressing issue to see so many people suffering. So, what about the tiny homes, though? Is this actually a good solution? Well, there's several different schools of thought. One thought that I've had is it really something that's going to be the best solution for a person who is used to living in a dense urban environment? Well, possibly. See, by getting somebody away from an environment that has been deeply connected with the issues that they might be having with drug addiction or mental health issues, could actually be the break that they need, the psychological break that they need, so that they can start fresh, so that they can get into a new mental paradigm, so that they can make those changes in their life. The other side of it is, I do believe that when you are packed together in dense urban apartments, there's going to be a tendency of still feeling disconnected, despondent, and depressed, especially if you're dealing with mental health. One of the best things, I think, for mental health, and again, I'm just an architect who's designed mental health facilities. I've never actually studied psychology all that deeply. I've read a little bit, but my understanding of that subject is somewhat limited, but I do know that nature helps a lot. One of the advantages to a tiny home community is you can actually fill up a lot of the space with open areas, grass, trees, shrubs, flowers, and help people have that communion with nature, which I believe that nature is one of the greatest remedies, one of the greatest medicines for mental health. And so by having that right around your tiny home, you can step out, sit on the porch, and sip your coffee and, look at a tree, watch a squirrel climb up the tree, and that can be a delightful moment that helps connect you spiritually to nature and realize that there's more to life than just, drugs and depression, So, and that's just my theory. I could be wrong. Again, pop a comment down if you know more about this subject. I would love to hear thoughts, maybe resources if you want to share. Part of the reason why I'm doing this specific video is because I feel like it's such an important topic. We have this homelessness crisis across the country in all our major urban centers, and it's a problem that we need to solve, and it's a problem that many, many different types of professionals need to be able to come together and help solve this problem. It's not going to be a problem that's going to be solved just by one architect or one psychologist doing stuff. It's going to be scores of people, legions of people working together for a common purpose of improving things. Because ultimately this is about human lives, the souls of human lives, and helping them improve. So again, sometimes I miss the days of the election campaign last year where I could just get angry and just vent. That was part of the reason why I started this YouTube channel, was so that I could vent. But the more I do it, the more I realize just complaining about things isn't going to really solve the problems that we have in this world. And we need to be having real discussions about real issues. And so definitely, if you understand homelessness better, if you have knowledge of this subject matter, contact me. Get a comment in there. Let's talk. I would love to help solve this problem, and I'm trying to do so. As I said, I'm working on a project right now, but obviously many hands make light work, and so let's do what we can to lift the souls that surround us and make this place a better place. And with that, if you like the video, give me a like or give me a rumble if you're on Rumble. Also, feel free to hit subscribe. It's one of those things that I'm trying to move this more into a direction of trying to solve problems, go through, discuss different topics, not necessarily as the be-all end-all answer to it, but more as somebody with expert knowledge that wants to find answers. And I'm open to suggestions. And so definitely contribute, help. Let's have more discussions. And with that, I'm the Colorblind Architect. Peace out.